Hello and welcome back into Double A Baseball. Adam Oppenheim with Alex Hynes here on Friday, October 3rd. The wild card series are now over, three of them going to three games, and we're on to the divisional series. Alex, we're going to hop right into it, starting with some of the wild card recaps. Let's start with the first series, at least of the 3 days, and that was Tigers Guardians. Tigers winning in three.
Well, we talked about the lack of offense, and there's a bit more than we thought.
Yeah, indeed.
Twice there were 6 runs scored. Cleveland in their win in game two, and then in the final game, the Tigers scored six as well. It was, I hate to say it, and I don't want to, completely, bash these teams more than we already kind of did at times in the last show, but it
And we were
definitely felt
right.
like it. Well, yes, we were right, but it did definitely feel like it was the most 12 o'clock wild card series of all time. It didn't necessarily have that kind of excitement then that we were kind of, well, we didn't really expect, but you kind of hope you get from a playoff series. And I think the one thing that just stood out to me, and I'm curious if you feel the same way. Obviously, Cleveland had the better final stretch. They had a great final 50 odd games. The Tigers collapse was obviously the big story. And so you could naturally then say that Cleveland were the better team. They won the division, in the same division of the team they were playing. But the Tigers, it felt like we're still the more talented team um, as a whole. And I think that plays a lot more in a 3 game series, and we may see the same in a 5 game series than you do when you have, a 2 month stretch, a full 162, whatever. And so I think it made more sense to me that the Tigers were going to win this despite how they entered into the playoffs, and that's what they did.
Well, I think when you take into account your entire rotation, I mean, Cleveland's is certainly better.
Yeah.
You're talking about the players that you have on the field, and for a Cleveland team that outside of Jose Ramirez, like we said, once again, does not have a lot. Brian Rocchio was actually really terrific in this series at the plate. And they had a couple other players who had big time hits, especially in game two. I believe it was in the eighth inning. They scored 5 runs, maybe, which was a little bit surprising for Cleveland, certainly. But this Detroit team, I mean, they came alive late. You knew they were probably going to win the Scooble game, which they did. But then Wencel Perez, who was just terrible in this series, comes up with a big hit to really blow it open in the seventh. And they got enough contributions across the board from other guys. Kerry Carpenter had 3 walks. The Tigers lineup is just a little bit more dangerous. Like Parker Meadows, if he's not going left on left, is a pretty good hitter as well. Above average hitter. Gleyber Torres has been solid this year. Javier Baez, when he swings a pitch, is inside the zone, which is a big if. Looks good. And on the defensive end, he's been solid as well. I mean, this Tigers team, they're a better team than Cleveland. I mean, that's what it is. That's what baseball comes down to, the better team. It's not always about home field advantage. And we both said the Tigers for that reason. They're a better overall team. And really, there isn't that much more to add because uh, sadly, we've talked about the Guardians for either right or wrong reasons most of the season. And we pretty much just predicted how it exactly was going to end.
Yeah, and Scooble striking out 14. I think that's the other thing too is for a 3 game series, and I'll say it again, for a 5 game series, you'll probably see something very similar. But when you get to a 3 game series and you have the best pitcher in baseball, certainly a top three pitcher in baseball, but I'd say, the best over the last 2 years,
Mhm.
that usually, not always, but usually is going to be a game you win or at least feel pretty good about winning. And then from there, you just need to win one other game on the road. So that neutralizes some of that home field advantage to an extent because when you have the overwhelming talent from a star pitcher, you can really, cut things down to where, hey, you just got to win one of those games. They lost the second game, but then they were able to come out do or die. Jack Flaherty, not a terrible option at
It was
all
pretty
to
good.
have as a game three starter. They have a bit more length than I think we gave them credit for as well. Casey Mize was going to be a solid a solid two starter, even though he only went 3 innings. But I think we kind of discounted the ability of Flaherty combined with their bullpen, which did a lot better outside of a couple of struggles in that second game than I think we would have expected.
Yeah, we're going to talk about a series in about probably 10 minutes that was the I like a similar vibe, great starting pitcher, but the difference is the talent between the teams. And the Tigers had the best pitcher and they had the advantage in terms of talent. So with that said, let's move on to the Cubs and the Padres. Cubs won in 3 games.
Well, I think the MVP of this series was the Cubs defense. And I think, you look at how Jed Hoyer has built this team. Defense has been a priority more so than I think some other teams do. And maybe
Absolutely.
you could argue
Yeah.
that there have been questions about the offense as a whole, not just this year, but other years under Hoyer. But in a series like this, where their offense was not gonna didn't do much and probably wasn't going to do much when you consider the Padres pitching staff, defense makes a difference up the middle. Dansby Swanson, Nico Horner, PCA in center. Matt Shaw made a great play in the final inning of Game Three. All four of those guys made huge plays overall. Even Michael Bush at first base, keeping his foot on the bag on that Matt rifled throw, that makes a difference. And I think if you have even a league average fielder at all of those positions, this is either a closer series or the Padres win that series.
I love how you went to defense first because that's what stands out. I mean, the amount of plays that the Cubs made in the field, and it's not like the Padres didn't make great plays. They made great plays, but there were some
Oh yeah.
tough ones. Swanson with 2 or 3 just phenomenal plays that saved big innings. And when the Padres are struggling to string together hits, that's a real buzzkill when you hit into a double play or Luis Ariz not running out of the box. He would have been on first base at least once, and if he was a little bit faster, maybe a 50th percentile in sprint speed, he would have been on for a second time. But this Padres team is just so desperate, just trying to score runs. We talked about it before the series. Not confident in the Padres offense. Outside of Machado and Tatis, who is not good in this series, and Jackson Merrill, they really just don't have a ton else. The bottom of the lineup is not going to scare you. Freddie Fermin actually had a pretty good series at the
Oh
plate,
yeah, I did.
but he's not historically been a good hitter throughout his short career so far. But the rest of the lineup, you're like, what are you getting? I mean, you're pinch hitting Jose Iglesias. You have Gavin Sheets in there, Jake Cronenworth. There isn't a whole lot that you could bank on being consistent offensive production. And it's sad because if you're a Padres fan, you're thinking about it. We have this just absolutely crazy bullpen. And we gave them a chance to win game 2, and they won game 2 by dominating the rest of the game. You didn't even give them a chance in game 3 because the Cubs led from the very start.
And yeah, I think we're also looking at just how the series was managed, even by Mike Schilte. And you mentioned pinch hitting Jose Iglesias. There was a lot that made little sense to me. The heavy lefty stacking. I understand you really want to get Ryan O'Hearn in there. Gavin Sheets, honestly, I mean, he's not great against lefties, but it's not like he is historically bad against lefties. Certainly, he's not much worse this year than Jose Iglesias was. I think they probably could have given a little bit more ride to Dylan Cease in game 2. I
He
mean, they
looked
won
good.
the game. They won the game, but still, obviously, Darvish struggled in game 3. That was an issue. But I just think you look at this, and we'll probably talk about this a bit more when we look at a 5 game series. But when you throw a bullpen, even a great bullpen like this, the best in the league, eventually you get looks. And the Cubs didn't necessarily have great success against this Padres bullpen, but you're taxing guys and you're getting to a point where Jeremiah Estrada is throwing in his second game of the series in the second inning of
And it
game
comes
three,
it comes in with the bases loaded, I
and
think.
he walks the guy. Yeah. Yu
Yeah.
Darvish is a 37, 36-year old established pitcher. Now, again, he didn't have his greatest stuff. I'm not necessarily saying it was a terrible move to pull him in the second inning. He didn't look like he had it. But as you say, any reliever, no matter how good they are, you could throw Mason Miller out there and it could still be a very dangerous spot to have him bases loaded. And I think there weren't any outs.
No outs. Yeah.
Um, and so Estrada, who's had command issues in his career, very notably with the Cubs, mind you, walks a guy in, and then the Cubs get the lead. And credit to the Cubs, their bullpen was phenomenal in this series. But I just think there were several times in which the Padres shot themselves in the foot, and I think roster construction, which we could talk about in the offseason, was not really up to par either. But I think you got to give a lot of credit though to the Cubs pitching staff because this was always going to be a hard series to score in. And the offense didn't really do a ton, but the defense, the pitching kept them in games. And I think the questions were much heavier, I think, around the pitching staff, maybe than it even was the offense, because you knew the bats had the talent, even if they had been scuffling. Whereas the pitching staff had a bit more questions with whether Matt Boyd, Shota Imanaga, Jameson Taillon, and then the bullpen could really pull things off.
Jameson Taillon was really good in game three, which
Yeah.
if you watched him for the past month is honestly not that surprising. He had two injuries, I believe, earlier this year that caused him to miss around 2 months, and he's been good ever since coming off the IL. And that was big because Shota Imanaga, it's going to be tough for him to go, 6 innings consistently in a playoff game. When batters get, a second or even third look at him through the lineup, it's going to be a lot more difficult. Same thing with Matthew Boyd, who had a terrific first half, but second half of the season has not been the same. But I think the Cubs bullpen was definitely overlooked coming into the series. We understand that the Padres had the best bullpen in the league, but it's not like the Cubs bullpen is, bottom five. I mean, I think they're a top 10 group easily in the MLB. You're talking about Andrew Kittredge, Daniel Palencia can be a little bit wild at times, and then Brad Keller. I mean, that was one wild ride. And obviously, well, as well mentioned, the strike three call on Xander Bogaerts in the ninth, and that was a big storyline. Padres players yelling at the ump, but yeah, ABS. I mean, if you have any question whether it should come into the MLB, I mean, it feels like there's no harm because it takes so little time and can prevent calls like this from happening. But that's all I'll say on that umpire call.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I mean, there wasn't great umpiring at times in the series behind the plate. So, I mean, it's one bad call, obviously. But again, I do just want to go beyond what we were talking about with the bullpen for the Cubs, just really quickly. Palencia, when you move him into the middle of the bullpen, instead of having him be the closer, where don't get me wrong, I love them playing Gasolina as he walks out, electric stuff. But with his wildness, he was perfectly suited to pitching in that fourth to sixth, seventh inning range against the Padres. You bring him in to a spot where you know with that really good fastball, he can really sort of feast. And then you have Drew Pomeranz, who comes in during that lefty stretch. They bring in the daunting Jose Iglesias off the bench. Otherwise, I mean, he's going left on left. That's perfect. And Colin Ray, I think, is going to be a bit unheralded if the Cubs can perform in this division series as a guy who, again, he was the five starter, but as a reliever, you can see him be more consistent around 95. He looked good in the inning and two-thirds he threw in the bullpen in this series. When you shorten out the starting pitching staff, and I think the Cubs are going to see shorter starts from their pitching in general, having those starters turned relievers that can give you multiple innings of relief at a time is going to be really important. And even a guy like Daniel Palencia threw multiple innings at a time in this series as well. So I think the Cubs' ability to get multiple innings out of guys will be important in Milwaukee as well as it was already in this series.
I think gluing those guys together, like, Shota with Colin Ray is big because then it can turn into actually, like one starter or whatever. But you're seeing two different guys and you're getting, at least you want to get to the sixth inning with two guys,
Right.
which when you get into a longer series, I mean, you can't really throw your bullpen from the second inning on for a game because that just hurts you down the line big time. It's fine to do in a best of three series, or certainly when there was the 1 game wild card. That's completely good to do. So with that being said, let's move on to the Red Sox and the Yankees. This was pretty much a thriller until game three, where it just seemed like the Yankees were in control the entire time.
I mean, we talked about Cam Schlittler being a very potential, important candidate. I don't think we expected this, the
That
12
was
strikeouts, eight shutout innings. But I think, again, we're talking about the fact that this pitching staff for the Yankees is deep enough to really be important. And the one thing I will say about this Yankees pitching staff as a whole, as we consider them looking forward, almost every single team in the wild card round had at least one outing in which their pitcher, no matter how good they are, no matter what the pedigree is of these guys went short outings and then they went straight to the bullpen to try and eat up innings. I mean, Matt Boyd barely went. He went four. The Cubs didn't have a guy go 5 innings or more. The Padres had Nick Pivetta go five exactly, no more. The list goes on. Tarek Skubal, I think, and Gavin Williams were the only two in that first series. The Yankees had six and a third, six and eight out of their three starters, and that meant this bullpen that we've had questions about was not
Just
very taxed.
right. They're not featured too much. That's a good point. I'm obviously going to look at it from the Red Sox point of view as a Red Sox fan. I mean, this is huge Red Sox fan who hates the Yankees, but the reason I picked the Yankees last week is just because they're a more talented team. You look at the Red Sox team in 21, they had at least a level playing field to the Yankees when they won that one game wild card. They had Nathan Eovaldi, it was versus Garrett Cole, but that Red Sox team had Bogart, Schwarber, Devers. It was a much different team than it is now. You're talking about not having Rafael Devers, which I'll get to in a second. Once again, not having Roman Anthony. If you don't have a lot of talent, you have to do the mental things well. And they made a bunch of errors on the field, and they swung outside the strike zone a lot. And they're starting pitching outside of Garrett Crochet. And honestly, I'm going to give Connolly early credit because he had a .67 FIP and ends up getting taken out in the fourth inning. I thought he was absolutely terrific in the game. Cedar Rafaela, who's going to be the Platinum Glove winner in the AL, had a 90% catch probability on the double to lead off the fourth. So I didn't even think he pitched bad. He wasn't even supposed to be in the spot to pitch in that winner go home game. But this Red Sox lineup, like I said, it's not very talented. And the one thing I also did mention when we were previewing this series is the lefties the Yankees have. The Red Sox lefties are not good left on left hitters, especially Jarren Duran. And that was the guy you hit leadoff in game three. Wilyer Abreu has not been great against lefties this year. There's just too many holes in the lineup. And this is why I said at the deadline, someone like Jarren Duran, and now he unfortunately is not going to have a lot of value for the Red Sox, but he is not that great of a player. And that's why I said the Red Sox should have traded him away. He had a great season last year. I'm not taking that away from him. But you're talking about a guy who doesn't hit for a lot of power, can hit extra base hits, doubles, triples, strikes out a lot, doesn't walk a ton, and most importantly, is not good in the field. And the problem with that is if you play at Fenway Park in left field, you really just have to worry about the wall, which can be difficult at times, but you don't have a lot of ground to cover. And what happens at Yankee Stadium? He goes back, then tries to come in a ball, goes off his glove in game two. And that was the difference between possibly winning the series in two and losing in three.
Yeah, and I'm just going to touch one more time on the Yankees because I think you kind of, took well, no, you I think covered the whole bases
Yeah.
on this Red Sox team. I think the one thing we can say is we didn't necessarily even see. I don't want to say we didn't see the best of the Yankees, but I think there's more to come out of
Oh,
that Yankees team. I mean, you didn't see an extra base hit out of Aaron Judge, who did get several singles for what it's worth. I mean, Cody Bellinger had a couple hits, including a double. I think that was the one that was
yep.
the
One that
catch
started off the
probability.
fourth. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Giancarlo Stanton had just one hit, and the two homers came from Ben Rice and good old Anthony Volpe,
Yeah.
everyone's favorite shortstop. I mean, there is plenty more in the tank here, and we'll see what they can do with Toronto. We'll preview that in a little bit. But I think that you can easily argue that while the pitching, I think, was about as good as the Yankees are going to expect, probably better than they're going to expect. The offense, I think, can do a lot more to where, I mean, they scored 9 runs in a 3-game series. I mean, that's good, but for the offense that was the highest powered offense in all of baseball, I think they expect more, and I think we will see more heading forward.
And I think it's fair to say they faced Garrett Crochet in one of those games. So
Also,
I
very,
mean, I
very
mean
true.
that was a third of the Yangs. Him and Aroldis Chapman, who nearly blew that game one, but did not. But that
Hey,
was a
that's
game.
2016 Aroldis Chapman
Yeah,
at its finest.
for sure. I will touch on one more thing, and this is something that I mentioned earlier in the year. I don't know how long I've been going on about the Red Sox, quite a bit, but the Rafael Devers trade. I just once again when it happened at the time and at the trade deadline. You can't let winning in the regular season shield you from what's to come in the playoffs. And that's why I always looked at the Red Sox. They were clear deadline losers. Just because you win 10 in a row in the regular season doesn't mean you're set up well for the postseason. And I think the Red Sox are a team that's a perfect example of how one injury, because you're relying on Roman Anthony so much, just derails your season because you trade away your other big lefty bat that would have been so good at Yankee Stadium. And you gave him away for pitchers. None of them pitched. Kyle Harrison did not pitch in this series. You gave him away
I
for
I
nothing.
personally enjoyed Jordan Hicks in the
Yeah.
playoffs, I'll have you know.
Yeah, he's really solid. But that's why you can't look at some of these trade deadline stuff as stuff happening right now. Baseball's that unique sport where it matters what you do in the postseason so much in the starting pitching you have. I mean, that's why I'm sure the Yankees are favored over the Blue Jays because look at the starting pitching they have, and their batting lineup's better, and the Blue Jays are probably going to be without Bichette. That's just how it works. You can't look at it right now saying, oh, you trade him away and suddenly you're better. No, they were better because their starting pitching was the best in the league, and so was their reliever ERA.
And the last thing I want to say on this too, because we probably really should move on to the Dodgers and Reds. But to that point, baseball is very much unique in that sense because you're playing such a long season, and when you come into the playoffs, I don't want to say it's a lot. There's a lot of luck in there, but I mean, you look at the Guardians. They won the season series against the Tigers and played better over the last 2 months. The Red Sox had a better season series against the Yankees all year long as well. I forget who put out this exact stat, and I'm going to butcher it anyway. But there was something where, in order to have the same kind of level of correlation between regular season performance and playoff performance, i.e., you want to have your playoffs essentially have the best teams winning, if that makes sense. The way that you
Yep.
will see it a
Yep.
lot more with the NFL, with the NBA,
Yes.
you would need to have like a best of like 90 something series in the playoffs. Like that is how randomized
For
baseball is, how unique it is, to where you obviously are going to, it's hard for you to you need to get lucky, but also when you talk about the trade deadline, you can't overreact over a quick sample right before the deadline, right after the deadline, because of just how long the season is and how unique the playoffs is to where a lot of that, I don't want to say doesn't matter, but
I mean, the
there's not
hitters
that same
get
correlation there.
in a 3 game series, they get what, 12 or 13 at bats, and that's just what you're judging
Right.
it off of. Whether you want a guy to be back the next season or not. It's not fair, but that's how it works. That being
Yeah.
said, I'm just gonna toss the mic over to you to talk Dodgers Reds.
Thank you. I mean, this was kind of what we expected. The Reds, our question was, could the pitching staff keep them in it? Hunter Green gives up 5 runs. That kind of sets the tone early, and I think after like the third inning, the second inning of that game one, you kind of realized, okay, yep, that is very much that. Unfortunately, we are not getting a chance to see the big bad Dodgers lose to the Reds in the power of friendship, but you know that's kind of what you expected. I don't think really there's too much more to say. I think most of this will be talking about that Philly series that's upcoming. The bats did their job, a couple homers each from Otani and Teoscar Hernandez. They pretty much got everything they could have asked out of the bats. Pitching wise, the bullpen still looks shaky. We can talk about that again when we talk about the division series, but you get great starts from Snell, from Yamamoto, and then can just coast things out. They didn't really need to use anybody else. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of, sad just to go from talking about the other 3 series so big, but I mean, this was kind of telegraphed from day one.
Yeah, it really was. Talk about the home run power of the Dodgers. The Reds are just not going to be able to match that. Otani's just so fun to watch
Oh
play.
yeah.
It's
Oh yeah.
incredible. And now you're going to see him pitch for the first time in the playoffs. Mookie Betts, I think that's going to be a big story. Is he didn't have a great regular season, hasn't been a great postseason performer, but he was really good. He had a 4-hit game in one of the games as well. This Dodgers team, I mean, outside the bullpen, I mean, I like what I'm seeing.
The other thing I will say though about this bullpen is you didn't see Tanner Scott, who had been the kind of highest volatility guy between he
Mhm.
should be very good, he has been very good, but this year he has not been. And so a lot of that volatility we saw out of the pen. I mean, Emmett Sheehan, starter turned reliever, he's a guy that very much could just be, pushed a bit to the back of the pen and just saying, all right, if we need you, we need you. But I don't think you're as worried about that. Alex Vesia was a bit more concerning because he is one of the main left-handers. Treinen was fine. So I do think that for as much as we have concerns about the bullpen, I don't think outside of Vesia, I don't think there's too much concern about their big bullpen arms that have been concerning. Overall. And I do want to say, I think Roki Sasaki out of the pen is going to be a huge piece because, again, they've got the ability to say, well, we've got four arms we like out of the rotation. Throw Roki out there who had struggled early on in the year, dealt with injury. And he's a guy that I think perfectly fits that bullpen. Hard thrower, good split. That's kind of the prototypical bullpen arm, period. So you throw him at the back end of the bullpen. I think he shores things up a little bit more in the shortened series, even if he is truly a starter by trade.
That was the name I was about to mention. So when you mentioned that, I was like, yep, that's right on there. I think it's also difficult for, a player who hasn't been in the MLB a ton this year, and now you're seeing him in the playoffs for the first time. Like, how do you adjust to that? It's a tough pitcher to face for sure. You got anything else to add on this series?
No, I think it's time to talk about some division series baseball starting tomorrow on Saturday.
What do you want to start with? What series?
Well, let's see which game starts first.
The first one
Uh,
I have listed on our thing is Cubs and Brewers, but we can go
let's
in
do it.
whatever order you want.
Let's go Cubs Brewers.
Okay, let's go Cubs Brewers. Boy, this should be really fun. I mean,
Ah,
the Brewers were so good in the regular season, uh, but this is gonna be a tough series against the Cubs. They just have more power in their lineup. This is definitely gonna be more higher scoring than the Cubs Padres series. And for the Brewers, the question is, and for all these teams who got buys, how do you play in game one after the long rest, which is just a big thing?
yeah, and I think for me, the biggest question with the Brewers is something we're not going to see as much with, I think, some of the other teams. Again, we were talking about the fact that starting pitching, again, is going to, has been, and probably will be in shorter chunks for a lot of these teams that don't necessarily have that either bona fide talent or just have had enough concerns recently, like the Cubs have with Boyd and Shota. I don't think they're probably going to go more than 5 innings each. They may not get that far. The same could be said. Maybe Tyone would be the one guy I think that could probably go the furthest for the Cubs. Outside of Freddie Peralta, who almost certainly is going to be the game one starter, it's a real big question. What are we going to get out of Quinn Priester? Who is going to be the game three starter? They've got options. I mean, they've got players that have pitched well, but I think Misarowski is probably going to end up in the pen the way he pitched. And I think in terms of just the overall length of that pitching staff, I'm kind of curious. But their bullpen, it's not the best bullpen of all time, but they've had a lot of guys that have caused the Cubs trouble specifically. I think Jared Koenig facing guys like PCA, switching around Ian Happ, going up against Tucker, the lefties will be a big piece before you even get to the McGill and Uribe combination at the very back end.
I think the first thing I think of is how does that Brewers, putting the ball and play strategy work out when it comes to the playoffs? Are they going to be able to deliver those clutch hits? It feels like they've been that team all season long that when they were, about to be out of a game, they would pull off a miraculous comeback in the playoffs. It can be a lot more difficult. But I mean, you got to give them credit if they find a way to keep on pulling these games out. But once again, it's just going to come down to the best of five series, which is what makes baseball so fun. Because I mean, the Brewers were well ahead of the Cubs in the second half of the year after their long winning streak.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing I will say, the bottom four teams in the season in barrel percentage, they don't square the ball up, they don't hit for high exit velocities as a whole. Cleveland was 30th, they lost. The Reds were 28th, they lost. The Padres were 27th. You want to know who's number 29 on that list?
Milwaukee.
The Milwaukee Brewers. So you're talking about an offense that has had its concerns, I think, even though they've played very well overall. But I think there's some underlying stuff, and I think the thing that it goes back to something we talked about with the wild card series. They put the ball in play. They don't hit for they don't hit a lot of barrels. They don't hit the ball very hard a lot. The Cubs play as good of a defense through their position players as you're going to see. I think that will definitely help the Cubs out a little bit. Where I think the little margins can definitely help narrow this gap a little bit to the Brewers, at least when it comes to the defensive side. I think the Cubs pitching will be fine. I think the Cubs defense against the Brewers offense will be fine. The big question for me, though, will be moving on from playing that very good Padres pitching staff, can the Cubs offense actually do a bit more? Because I don't think if they're going to be able to win a series scoring the way they did
I agree.
against the Padres.
Certainly. All right, we got about 8.5 minutes left. So let's talk Yankees Jays. I guess we've talked about the Yankees a lot, so we can focus on the Jays now. This is going to be an interesting one for the Jays because their starting rotation is not very good right now outside of Kevin Gausman. I mean, I think is Max Scherzer in line to start game three?
It's entirely possible. I mean,
Jose Barrios.
depends
I
on how
don't
they
know.
want to go. I mean, Trey Savage is lined up as a potential starter,
Oh,
which is concerning if you ask me.
yeah, it's Shane Bieber. I forgot about him.
Yeah,
It's either.
Bieber's probably game two, but still.
Hey, I will say, Alex, we don't disagree on many things, but I was like, yeah, Shane Bieber, I think he's pretty good. And they didn't give up a whole lot to get him, and now he's starting game two.
I'll hold my hands up. I'll accept where I was wrong. He's had a good time since getting traded.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see if he gets torn apart by the Yankees lineup, but I feel like the Blue
In
Jays are
that
gonna,
case, then I win. I don't make the rules.
yeah, but this Blue Jays lineup, I feel like they're gonna need to score a lot. And this is gonna be especially tough because a couple are top bats, Nathan Lucas and Addison Barger, they're lefties, and neither of them are really good left on left. And you're gonna see Freedom Rodon is two lefties, at least for the Yankees. They don't rely on their bullpen, but that's gonna be big. I'm excited to see the Blue Jays in the playoffs, man. They had a great regular season, but outside of the game one starter, I'm not sure what you're getting from their starting pitching.
Yeah, and that's where again you don't know what I think. Bieber could be solid as a game two starter, but again you go Max Scherzer. What happens in a game four? And their bullpen has a bit of concerns for me as well. I'm not completely sold on the Sir Anthony Dominguez, Jeff Hoffman kind of back end of the bullpen. I mean Hoffman has had some big rough patches, and you know it's one thing to face a couple of these teams, but you're facing the Yankees. You are getting, Aaron Judge. You're getting Giancarlo Stanton in the playoffs. You're facing Bellinger. Chisholm had a good series. I mean, you are seeing a lineup that doesn't really have very many holes one through nine. And so not only is the offense going to have to really do something, but the pitching is going to be up against it. And, you're talking about a couple of guys that, Gosman's getting up, it's been good, but Scherzer's up there in age, obviously over 40. Shane Bieber has been good, but again, he's been coming back from injury to where you go from I like him, trading for him to I want him in a game two, a game four, a game five situation. Um, I'm a bit more concerned about the Jays here in this series.
I would agree. So let's move on to the other NL series. Dodgers, Phillies. Talk about this for a few minutes, and then we're gonna have to move on to Tigers, Mariners real quick. So first,
I
Dodgers,
mean, why couldn't this be a seven-game series? I mean,
truly.
I think this will be the best series in the playoffs. It's entirely possible. I mean, it always has been. These are two teams that have perennially been in the NLCS, or usually when they don't make the NLCS, they've been screwed by a matchup just like this in the division series. And so you're getting top quality offense on both sides, the deepest lineups maybe outside of the Yankees or even including the Yankees, and as good of a pitching staff on either side, on the starting side of things as you're going to see in the playoffs. And so I'm just excited because this could really go either way. And I think that's kind of where I stand. I don't know what your thoughts are, but I think this is a series that should go 5 games and could entirely go any way you like.
I mean, I still feel good about the Phillies in this series. I think the two biggest question mark for each of these teams, though, is the bullpen, which I think you feel better about the Phillies because they added the deadline, where the Dodgers have just had a ton of injuries and their bullpen down the line. You feel good about Christopher Sanchez. You would feel great. I mean, it would lean heavily towards the Phillies if you had Zach Wheeler still. You had Wheeler,
Right.
Sanchez, Luzardo. I mean, Sanchez, Luzardo, Suarez isn't too bad, and then having Aaron Nola as well. Maybe Walker Bueller is going to give you playoff Bueller. I don't know.
Well, and the last thing I'll say about this, I think this series, again, you're going to see pitchers go deep into games, I think, but this is the series where I think it's one based on one game more than likely, and it's going to be what game do these sure-handed starting pitchers not get through, say, 4 or 5 innings? There's going to probably be one game out of all these where that one pitcher is going to get beat up early. Whichever offense can beat up on somebody early, force into these weaker bullpens uh, early on in the game, likely win that game because of it, is going to put you in great shape for weakening out the bullpen later on in the series and getting a chance to see more looks at guys for a longer stint. Because again, these pitchers in the bullpens have struggled, and the more you see them, the easier they are to hit. And I think if this series goes five, you're going to get a lot of looks. So whichever pitcher gets knocked out early, I think that's going to be the biggest difference because it may only be one pitcher, one game.
Yeah, that series should be a lot of fun. Last series, Tigers Mariners.
We talked about the Mariners pitching staff all year long, or well, at least from heading into the year. It's maybe not as great as we would have hoped, but I mean, you're talking about Brian Wu, Luis Castillo, Logan Gilbert. They've got George Kirby as uh, probably a four starter, depending on who they like in what. I mean, you got Scooble on the other side. I think it will be interesting to see how they deploy Scooble. Obviously, he'll probably be the game one starter. But does he pitch a game four? If so, who pitches game five kind of thing if they get that far? I'm a bit more worried about the Tigers in a 5 game set compared to a 3 game set, though.
Yeah, I'm a bit more worried about them playing a better team, which would be the Seattle Mariners.
Also entirely true. Yes.
I mean, I think the Seattle Mariners adding the deadline was huge. Picking up someone like Josh Naylor just elevates their lineup big time. You add another big power bat in their lineup. Eugenio Suarez has not been great since they picked him up, but still, I trust him more than whoever else they were going to try to shift around and play at third base. The Mariners lineup is just better. Feel good about them, especially their bullpen has been really good. Matt Brash, Andres Munoz at the back end. They're going to be their eighth and ninth inning guys. Um, but yeah, that should be a really fun series as well. But like you mentioned, I think the best series is going to be Phillies Dodgers.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen that series like every single year. It's like them, and then you see the Padres occasionally, other teams that are really good. But it's I think it's always going to be that Dodgers Phillies series. It's been the last couple of years. So I'm just really really excited to see what that one has. But I think you look at the Brewers Cubs could be sneaky interesting depending on how things look at AmFam in games one and two. We know Wrigley will be bumping. We'll see how they bring it up in Milwaukee.
Yeah, certainly. You were at Wrigley for that first game of the
Yeah,
wild card.
as good of an atmosphere as you'll see. A team starved for the playoffs since 2018 with fans.
I mean, there's a lot of teams starving right now. Certainly, Blue Jays,
Also true.
Mariners, maybe even the Yankees, considering they haven't won a World Series title in a long time for their standards. Well, that's going to wrap it up here on Double A Baseball. We'll be back for some recaps of the divisional series and then previews of the championship series after the divisional series. And so, once again, for my partner, Alex Hynes, I'm Adam Oppenheim. We'll see you next time on Double A Baseball.